Americans have a pretty short memory. So when we see something dramatic happen like yesterday's record drop in the Dow, we tend to blame, oh, yeah, I think it's his fault. But the real story is that the seeds of almost every crisis we face, from the Cuban Missile Crisis to the gas shortages in the Southeast that are happening right now, to this financial crisis, these seeds were planted a long, long time ago. Let me read you a few highlights from a New York Times article to prove my point. Quote, in a move that could help increase home ownership rates among minorities and low-income consumers, the Fannie Mae Corporation is easing the credit requirements on loans that it will purchase from banks and other lenders. The action will encourage those banks to extend home mortgages to individuals whose credit is generally not good enough to qualify for conventional loans. Fannie Mae, the nation's biggest underwriter of home mortgages, has been under increasing pressure from the administration to expand mortgage loans among low and moderate income people. In addition, banks, thrift institutions, and mortgage companies have been pressing Fannie Mae to help them make more loans to these so-called subprime borrowers. In moving, even tentatively, into this new area of lending, Fannie Mae is taking on significantly more risk, which may not pose any difficulties during the flush economic times, but the government-subsidized corporation may run into trouble in an economic downturn, prompting a government rescue similar to that of the savings and loan industry in the 1980s. So you know, that article was published exactly 9 years ago today, September 30th, 1999. The administration that was pressuring Fannie Mae, the Clinton administration. The point is, this storm has been building for an awfully long time, and both sides are dirty in it. But it began with a seemingly harmless concept, the idea that home ownership is the American dream, and therefore a right and not a privilege. Gee, have I heard that on the campaign trail lately. This idea was championed by groups like the Association of Community Organizers for Reform Now, or ACORN for short. This is a group that lobbies, or if I may speak plainly, blackmails companies and politicians into meeting their demands. ACORN screams affirmative action to scare lenders and then volunteers to serve as advisors to those same lenders that will change their practices. In other words, they threaten to expose people as racist unless they agreed to ACORN's idea of reform. It is a scam, pure and simple. The ironic part of all of this is that people actually call ACORN a group of community organizers, which also happens to be the title of, Barack Obama, that he's so fond of. Unfortunately, the title isn't the only thing that they have in common, as David Freddoso, author of The Case Against Barack Obama and political reporter for National Review, will explain here. First, am I being too strong in saying that they engage in blackmail? David.
Well, now, blackmail is a crime, of course, but it's something that very much resembles that. The idea here is that if your bank isn't willing to do what we want to make these risky loans, we are going to use every legal avenue we have. The Community Reinvestment Act of 1977 allowed groups like ACORN to object when banks wanted to engage in certain transactions that required federal approval. For example, if they wanted to do a merger. Beginning in 1990 in Illinois, actually, ACORN, headed by an activist leader who's close with Barack Obama, Madeline Talbot. This is, by the way, an excellent piece in the New York Post recently by Stanley Kurtz outlining all of this. Beginning in 1990 in Illinois, ACORN began a campaign of intimidating these banks into making more of these loans, or else they would file and start proceedings to try to block bank mergers and block the banks from doing what they wanted to do.
And so, they would. We have such a short period of time. So what they would do is the banks would relieve their pressure. They would just give in, do it, because they didn't want to be called racist and they wanted to be able to open up. But then they would move that extra money over to Fannie and Freddie, right, to relieve the pressure off of them.
This is where Fannie Mae where Fannie Mae comes in and is so important, because they were able to buy the risk from the banks. They keep the banks liquid to make more bad loans by buying loans that are worse and worse. And that story you read from the New York Times, that was key in them expanding the pool of loans they were willing to buy.
It was a praise piece, believe it or not, in 1999. Now,
yes,
Obama has connections. There was not only in this bailout bill, 20% of all the profit was supposed to go to a slush fund for ACORN, which is campaigning now, if I'm not mistaken, for Barack Obama. But what is his connection to ACORN?
Well, Obama's connection to ACORN is very extensive. There was a recent, I believe a couple years ago, an article in which one of ACORN's leaders said, hey, you know, he's like an old friend of ours. It's only natural that people from ACORN would volunteer to work on his state Senate campaigns and his U.S. Senate campaign. And it's very likely that his presidential campaign will also be featuring ACORN volunteers out working for him. They also register voters. Obama headed up ACORN's voter registration drive in Chicago, but unfortunately those drives are known nowadays mostly for the voter fraud allegations and convictions that have come down.
Okay, David, thanks a lot.